In the smoking mountains at the edge of the world, something stirred beneath the stone. Welcome to Westeros Within, where we journey into forgotten ages, hidden legends, and ancient mysteries. This is Before the Thrones, Episode 5, The Rise of Valyria, where dragons first rose. While the Andals carved their faith across Westeros, far to the east, on a peninsula of fire and black rock, a story was beginning that would reshape the known world. The Valyrian Peninsula, a jagged finger of land thrust into the summer sea, crowned by a chain of 14 volcanic mountains known as the 14 Flames. The mountains burned day and night. Rivers of molten rock flowed through the valleys. The air itself shimmered with heat. And deep beneath those mountains, in caverns of fire and smoke, something lived. Dragons. The old tales say they were creatures of fire made flesh. Scales like hammered bronze and iron. Wings that blotted out the sun. Breath that could melt stone and turn steel to liquid. No one knows how long the dragons had lived beneath the 14 Flames. Some say they had been there since the dawn of the world, sleeping in the molten heart of the earth. But the people who lived in the shadow of those mountains were not kings or conquerors. They were shepherds, simple herderos, tending their flocks on the grassy slopes between the volcanoes. They built no great cities. They fought no great wars. They were, by all accounts, an ordinary people living an ordinary life at the edge of the world, until the day they found the dragons. The stories do not agree on how it happened. Some say a shepherd boy stumbled into a volcanic cavern and found a clutch of eggs. Others say the dragons rose from the mountains on their own, drawn by something in the blood of the Valyrian people, something ancient and unexplained. What matters is what came next. Because the Valyrians did not run from the dragons. They tamed them. How they did it remains one of the deepest mysteries in all of history. Some speak of sorcery, blood magic, horns that could bind a dragon's will to a rider's command. Others say it was something in the Valyrian bloodline itself, a gift written into their very flesh. Whatever the truth, the result was absolute. The shepherds became dragon lords, and dragon lords do not remain shepherds for long. They built their first city in the shadow of the 14 Flames. Not a village, not a town. A city of towers and roads and walls that seemed to grow from living rock, as though the stone itself obeyed their will. They called it Valyria, and it was unlike anything the world had ever seen. The Valyrians did not build the way other men built. They shaped stone with dragon fire and sorcery. Their roads were fused into the earth itself, straight and smooth and unbreakable. Their towers rose impossibly tall, thin as needles, gleaming in the volcanic light. They forged a metal no one else could make, Valyrian Steel. Blades so sharp they could cut through ordinary steel like parchment. Lighter than any sword, stronger than any armor. And they never dulled, never rusted, never broke. The secret of its forging was bound to dragonfire and magic, and no smith outside Valyria ever learned to replicate it. With dragons in the sky and Valyrian steel in their hands, the Valyrians looked outward, and the world trembled. The old tales say the Ghiscari Empire was the first to fall. Gis, the oldest civilization in Essos, a proud and ancient people who had built their empire on the backs of slaves and the strength of their legions. 5 times the Ghiscari marched against Valyria. 5 times the dragons burned them. Their legions, their cities, their pyramids, all of it reduced to ash and scorched stone. Old Gis fell, and in its ruins, the Valyrians built slave markets of their own. But the dragon lords were not gentle rulers. They conquered as conquerors always do, taking gold, land, and lives wherever they turned their gaze. Slavery was the foundation of the freehold. Thousands upon thousands of slaves worked the mines beneath the 14 flames, digging for gold and silver and precious gems in tunnels so deep and so hot that men died by the hundreds. When one slave fell, another took his place. The mines never closed, the forges never cooled, and from this empire of fire and blood, the Valyrians spread across Essos like a tide. They conquered Lys and Mare and Tyrosh. They built Volantis, the oldest and proudest of their colonies. They stretched their reach from the summer sea to the shivering sea, from the 14 flames to the very borders of the known world. For thousands of years, the Valyrian Freehold stood as the greatest power the world had ever known. Not a kingdom, not ruled by any single king. A freehold, governed by the Dragonlord families who sat in their great council and made their decisions together, each family's power measured by how many dragons they could call to heal. At its height, the freehold commanded hundreds of dragons. Hundreds. There was nothing on earth that could stand against them. But even dragon lords can make enemies. To the northwest of the freehold, along the banks of a great river called the Rhoyne, another civilization had risen, the Rhoynar. A proud and ancient people, river dwellers who built their cities along the water and worshipped a river goddess they called Mother Rhoyne. The Rhoynar were no simple people. Their cities were rich and beautiful. Their water magic was powerful and strange. They had lived along the Rhoyne for thousands of years before the Valyrians ever tamed a dragon. But when the freehold expanded north, the Rhoyne lay directly in its path. The Rhoynar fought. Prince Garin the Great gathered the largest army the world had ever seen, 250,000 strong, and marched against the Dragonlords. And for a brief, shining moment, the Rhoynar won. Their water magic turned the rivers against the Valyrians. Men drowned in floods summoned from the earth. The Rhoynar drove the Valyrian legions back and celebrated a victory that seemed impossible. But the Dragonlords did not accept defeat. 300 dragons descended on the Rhoyne. 300. The river boiled. The cities burned. Garin the Great was captured and hung in a golden cage, forced to watch as everything he had fought for was destroyed. The Rhoynar civilization was broken in a single day. Those who survived fled. A warrior princess named Nymeria gathered 10,000 ships and sailed west, carrying her people away from the ashes of their homeland, searching for a land where the Dragonlords could not reach them. Their long voyage would end in dawn. But that is another story. What mattered to Valyria was that no one was left to challenge them. The Ghiscari destroyed. The Rhoynar scattered. Every kingdom, every city, every people who stood against the freehold had been broken or absorbed. The Valyrians stood alone at the top of the world. And perhaps that was their mistake. Because empires with no enemies begin to turn on themselves. The Dragonlord families grew jealous. They schemed against one another. Blood feuds festered for generations. The Great Council became a battleground of ambition and suspicion. And beneath it all, the 14 flames still burned. 40 families ruled the freehold at its height. But one of those families, a family of modest power and limited ambition, did something no other family thought to do. They left. A woman named Daenys, later called Daenys the Dreamer, saw something in a vision of fire and ruin and the end of everything she knew. She told her father, Rhoynar Targaryen. And Rhoynar believed her. The Targaryens sold their holdings, gathered their dragons, and sailed west to a small island at the mouth of Blackwater Bay. Dragonstone, a volcanic rock, a fortress, a shelter at the very edge of the world. The other Dragonlord families laughed at them. The Targaryens, fleeing the greatest civilization in history for a lonely rock in the sea. But Daenys had seen the truth, and the truth was coming. So tell me this, would you have believed Daenys? Write it in the comments. And if you want more stories from the forgotten ages of Westeros, subscribe to Westeros Within and join me for the next chapter. Next time, fire rains from the sky, and the greatest civilization the world has ever known is destroyed in a single day.